Beneath the shadow of the palace, a war of succession erupts as King Charles III places his absolute trust in Princess Catherine, pushing Queen Camilla into an abyss of jealousy. Enraged by the looming threat of losing her standing, Camilla orchestrates a despicable plot to steal a royal treasure, turning a grand banquet into a silent execution ground. In a matter of moments, Catherine is accused by the entire palace of stealing the artifact right before the king's eyes. Amid the cold, hostile stares of the royal household, Camilla revels in her triumph, convinced she has driven her rival into a corner, forever erasing the heart of the monarchy from the future throne. Will Catherine withstand the venomous slander to defend her honor, or will Camilla's crime succeed in deceiving them all? What judgment will be delivered when the naked truth of betrayal steps into the light? The atmosphere within Buckingham Palace since the beginning of 2024 has no longer been constrained by rigid ceremonial formality, but instead shrouded in a heavy, suffocating silence. The brutal battle against cancer has inadvertently drawn King Charles III and Princess Catherine closer than ever before. Within the palace's endless corridors, they are no longer merely sovereign and subject, but two souls walking together at the edge of death. This bond has created an unprecedented precedent, breaking the traditional royal rules that once enforced distance between generations of heirs. King Charles III makes no effort to conceal his admiration for his daughter-in-law. He continuously bestows upon her symbolic gestures and the highest honors, culminating in the title of Royal Companion of Honor. In private council meetings, the monarch openly declares that Catherine is the living heart of the monarchy. He is captivated by her composure, her unyielding resilience, and her powerful ability to connect with the public, a form of soft power no crown could ever generate on its own. This favoritism does not end with titles. Catherine's influence continues to expand, placing her at the center of the most significant royal events. The peak of this bias comes when King Charles III reveals his intention to grant her control over the Sandringham estate. This is not merely an invaluable private property, but the spiritual homeland of the House of Windsor. In a study bathed in the glow of sunset, King Charles III looks directly into Camilla's eyes, his voice sharp and unyielding. Sandringham needs a guardian who commands absolute trust from the public. Catherine has proven she is more deserving than anyone. Camilla stands frozen, her hand gripping the velvet armrest tightly. Her face betrays a mix of shock and fury. To her, this is not simply an administrative decision, but a punishment, a public humiliation aimed squarely at her position as queen. Rage ignites within her as she realizes she is slowly becoming obsolete within her own palace. In the shadows, a ruthless plan begins to take shape to reclaim what she believes is rightfully hers. Will Camilla's fury give rise to a dark conspiracy capable of bringing down the heart of the monarchy? Seizing the moment when the banquet began to descend into mild chaos, as guests immersed themselves in admiring the royal garden's flower collection, Camilla quietly slipped away from the crowd. With her intimate knowledge of every corner of the palace, she stealthily made her way into the royal vault, an area heavily guarded yet riddled with blind spots before a queen who wielded absolute authority. Her target was the Williamson Pink Diamond brooch, one of the most precious and symbolically powerful pink diamonds in the world. The gem's radiant glow reflected in Camilla's ambition-filled eyes as she swiftly concealed it in her palm. Moments later, Camilla moved toward the staff preparation area. She intercepted Elena, a young, inexperienced waitress, trembling with fear. "Listen carefully." Camilla whispered, her voice as cold and sharp as a blade pressed against Elena's throat. "Take this and slip it into Princess Catherine's handbag immediately. If you dare utter a word or ruin this, your family will disappear from London before sunset. Do you understand?" Elena trembled violently, her eyes wide with terror. Yet under the overwhelming force of the most powerful woman in the palace, the poor girl had no choice but to carry out the vile act, while Catherine was occupied receiving distinguished guests. As the banquet reached the height of its elegance, Camilla suddenly rose to her feet, her face shifting into a mask of feigned panic. She clutched her chest, her trembling voice loud enough to silence the entire room. "Oh my God, the Williamson brooch! It's gone! Someone has broken into the vault!" Murmurs rippled through the hall like a rising tide. King Charles frowned. Concern etched clearly across his face. Without giving anyone time to react, Camilla turned sharply towards the guests, her gaze cutting like a blade. "This is an insult to the monarchy. For the sake of transparency, I demand that security search every guest here and now. No exceptions." Catherine stood there, her refined face marked by surprise, yet she maintained her composed dignity. She had no idea that a trap had already been laid beneath her feet. As security personnel approached her handbag, resting on the banquet table, the air thickened with suffocating tension. A dry click echoed as the bag was opened. The officer froze, his hands trembling as he pulled out a dazzling object glowing with a vivid pink light. The Williamson Pink Diamond brooch lay neatly inside Catherine's handbag, shining with cruel irony beneath the chandelier. The entire room fell into a deadly silence. Teacups in the guests' hands seemed to freeze mid-air. The eyes that once held admiration and respect for Catherine now shifted into suspicion, coldness, and even contempt. "Catherine, what is the meaning of this?" King Charles exclaimed, his voice choked with shock and disappointment. I don't know. I truly don't know how it got there." Catherine cried out, her face pale, her eyes beginning to blur with tears. Camilla stepped forward, her lips curling into a triumphant smile, while her tone dripped with sarcasm and cruelty. "Unbelievable. Our exemplary princess turns out to be nothing more than a common thief. Are you so deprived that you must steal a national treasure in your own father's house? Don't you dare twist the truth!" Catherine shouted in utter anguish, tears streaming down her face. "I have never touched that thing. This is a filthy setup, a setup." Camilla scoffed, stepping closer, her voice dropping into something venomous. "The evidence is right there, dear sister-in-law. The light of this diamond has already exposed your true nature. Do you intend to wash away theft with tears? Don't be ridiculous." Catherine collapsed inward, looking around only to be met with disappointed headshakes and the turned backs of those she once trusted. The crushing weight of injustice strangled her voice, leaving her unable to speak. At the center of humiliation, Camilla stood like a queen of shadows, savoring the sight of her rival buried in the filth of disgrace. Will Catherine find a way to clear her name when every piece of evidence stands against her? And will Elena, the sole keeper of the truth, dare to expose Camilla's conspiracy before it is too late? The grand hall of Windsor Castle suddenly grew suffocating like a courtroom awaiting execution. Camilla stood upright, chin lifted high, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she watched Catherine tremble in the storm of humiliation. The noble guests began to step back, creating an invisible yet merciless distance from the woman they had only moments ago hailed as the heart of the monarchy. Suspicion spread like a toxic virus, gnawing away at the trust they once placed in the princess. And yet, just as Camilla prepared to deliver her final crushing blow, with even harsher words, a choked sob broke from the corner of the room. Elena, the young maid, her face drained of all color, stepped out from the line of staff. Her legs gave way, her entire body collapsing onto the marble floor, right at the feet of King Charles III. "Your Majesty, please forgive me, I can't stay silent any longer." Elena's cry tore through the suffocating stillness. Camilla's face went pale, her eyes blazing with fury as she snapped, "This girl has lost her mind. Guards, remove this lunatic at once. Stand down." King Charles III's voice rang out low, controlled yet carrying a force that froze every guard in place. He looked down at Elena, his gaze sharp with interrogation. "Speak. What do you know?" Elena trembled violently, her finger pointing straight at Camilla, her voice fractured by fear. It was the Queen who forced me to do it. She stole the brooch and threatened to destroy my family if I didn't place it in Princess Catherine's bag. She wanted to frame the princess out of jealousy. I swear before God everything I say is the truth. A shockwave of horror rippled through the room. Camilla let out a cold laugh, one laced with contempt and icy disdain, as she stepped toward Elena, her voice hissing through clenched teeth. "A lowly servant, barely a month in this palace, dares to smear the Queen of the United Kingdom with such cheap lies! Your Majesty, it is obvious she has been bribed to stage this pathetic performance in a desperate attempt to save Catherine." Turning to Charles, her eyes filled with the confidence of someone who believed every trace had been erased. Camilla pressed on Charles, "Would you believe a servant over your own wife? She has no proof, nothing but the empty words of a coward." But King Charles III did not look at Camilla. His gaze drifted toward the portraits of his ancestors, watching silently from the walls. Disappointment carved deep lines across the monarch's aged face. Slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small remote device, his voice calm to the point of being chilling. "Camilla, there is one thing you miscalculated. I do not run this monarchy on trust alone. Last month, after the security breaches, I ordered the installation of ultra-miniature thermal sensor cameras in all the royal display rooms. They do not record visible light. They capture the heat signatures of the human body, something no darkness or signal jammer can conceal." Camilla's face shifted from flushed anger to a deathly pale white. She staggered back a step, her lips trembling, unable to form a single word. The king pressed the button. A large screen in the hall flickered to life. The images that appeared were not in natural color, but in blazing shades of orange and red human heat against a deep blue void. Every guest fixed their eyes upon it. In the footage, a female figure, unmistakably Camilla in form, slipped into the chamber housing the Williamson Pink Diamond. The thermal camera captured every movement in stark clarity, opening the glass case, taking the artifact, and the moment she encountered Elena in a dark corridor, forcing the item into the young maid's hands. Her body glowed an intense red, a clear sign of heightened agitation, a racing heartbeat at the height of her crime. Every defense Camilla had offered dissolved into nothing before the cold, undeniable evidence of technology. Catherine, still frozen with tears on her cheeks, stared at the screen, then at her mother-in-law. The pain of betrayal cut deeper than the agony of false accusation. King Charles turned back to Camilla. There was no trace of warmth left in his eyes, only the absolute coldness of a judge delivering sentence. "You used the very hands that bear the royal ring to steal my mother's legacy, and turned it into a blade to stab the daughter-in-law who stands beside me in the face of illness. Camilla, did you truly think I was that blind?" Camilla stood rooted in place, her breath ragged, every layer of aristocratic facade completely stripped away under the merciless exposure of thermal truth. Her cruelty was not only revealed, it had become the most damning verdict of all irreversible and absolute. Now that the sinister conspiracy has been dragged into the light of justice, what judgment will King Charles deliver upon the wife who betrayed both his trust and the crown itself? St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle, once a symbol of royal glory, had now become the stage witnessing the collapse of an inner court dynasty. The thermal images exposing Camilla's act of theft still burned vividly across the giant screen like an open wound. Silence engulfed the vast chamber so completely that one could hear the ragged, chaotic breathing of the woman who had just been stripped of her queenly mask. King Charles III stood immovable at the center. His face bore no trace of a husband, only the cold, ruthless resolve of a monarch executing ultimate justice. He stared directly at Camilla, who trembled, her eyes bloodshot with humiliation and fury. "Your Majesty, you cannot do this to me in front of everyone." Camilla hissed, her voice hoarse, clinging desperately to the last remnants of her authority. "I am your wife. I stood by you through decades of darkness. You would cast me aside over such a trivial mistake." Charles stepped forward. The distance between them had become an unbridgeable abyss. His voice rang out sharp as the blade of justice. "A trivial mistake. You call the theft of a national treasure and a scheme to destroy the honor of an ailing princess a mistake. Camilla, you never loved this monarchy. You only loved the shadow of yourself upon a throne you were never worthy to sit on. You promised to protect me." Camilla screamed, her final shred of arrogance shattering into bitter fragments. "Without me, you would have rotted in loneliness long ago. You are the true traitor enough." The king's roar made the crystal chandeliers tremble violently. "You have signed your own sentence with your petty, despicable jealousy." King Charles III turned to his private secretary, who stood ready with a dossier sealed in red. He took the pen and signed with firm, decisive strokes, each letter etched onto the page like hammer blows, sealing Camilla's fate. "Listen carefully," Charles declared, his voice carrying across the grand hall, echoing into the ears of every courtier and every guard. "From this moment forward, I hereby decree the removal of all powers, titles, and privileges of Camilla as a senior member of the British royal family. She is permanently barred from Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, and shall never again set foot in Sandringham or any other royal residence." A horrified murmur rippled through the crowd. This was the greatest internal purge in modern history. The king's decree marked the absolute end of Camilla's influence. She was now nothing more than an outcast, a ghost of the past, driven away from the radiance of power. Camilla staggered backward, her eyes boring into Catherine with unrestrained hatred. But the princess did not flinch. Catherine stood tall, tears glistening in her eyes, yet shining with unbreakable steel. Her composure at this moment was the cruelest punishment for the one who had just tried to destroy her. King Charles III slowly took the Williamson Pink Diamond brooch from the hands of the royal guard. The pink diamond gleamed brilliantly under the lights as if newly purified from the grime of conspiracy. Before the astonished assembly, the monarch approached Catherine. With his own hands, he pinned the precious brooch onto his daughter-in-law's chest. This was no mere ornamental gesture, it was a rite of power and absolute trust. The king's hands trembled slightly as they touched Catherine's shoulder, not from weakness, but from the emotion of a father witnessing the salvation of his lineage. "This brooch belongs to one with a pure heart," Charles said, his voice warm enough for Catherine to hear, yet firm enough for all to remember. "You are the future of this monarchy, Catherine. From this day forward, the respect given to you is the respect given to me. Whoever schemes against you is an enemy of this kingdom." Catherine bowed her head gracefully, a gesture of submission imbued with authority. When she lifted her gaze, the pink diamond upon her chest radiated brilliantly, completely eclipsing the broken figure of Camilla being escorted away under the cold supervision of the royal guards. The courtiers immediately bowed to Catherine. The doubtful glances from before had now been replaced by absolute reverence and admiration. King Charles III turned his gaze toward the exit where Camilla's figure had just vanished behind the heavy oak doors. A dark era had closed, and upon the ashes of betrayal, a new monarchy founded on Catherine's integrity and trust had officially begun. After being stripped of everything and cast out from the light of power, will Camilla accept defeat, or will she nurture a new storm of fury in the shadows? The heavy oak door of the isolated wing at Raymill House slammed shut, the dry crack echoing like a gavel, striking down a death sentence upon the reputation of a lifetime. The collapse did not come from death, but from being forgotten while still breathing. the days that followed became an unbroken chain of spiritual torment. There was no longer a scepter to command, with no retinue of loyal servants kneeling at her feet, not even a single attendant to answer her hoarse, fraying calls. Camilla was placed under complete house arrest, cut off entirely from the outside world. Within that isolated room, her only companions were suffocating solitude and the lingering ghosts of a jealousy-ridden past. On certain nights, the guards stationed in the corridor would shudder as they heard a chilling laughter echo from within. It was the laughter of a woman who had lost everything, a deranged, hollow cackle of someone who had finally realized she had set fire to her own palace of glory for nothing more than a pink diamond and a sliver of petty greed. She stared into the mirror and saw a face aged and ravaged by hatred, no longer a dignified queen, but a disgraced sinner cast out from the current of history. In stark contrast to those ashes, a new era was blazing into life at Buckingham Palace. The radiance of Princess Catherine now stood unobstructed by any shadow. Her integrity, proven in the wake of a scandal that shook the nation, had become a beacon of trust for the British public. Catherine appeared at royal engagements on behalf of the king with an entirely transformed presence, no longer a young royal in need of guidance, but a formidable future queen, a woman who had triumphed over the most despicable conspiracy through nothing but her own virtue. King Charles III, standing on the palace balcony and gazing down at the crowd chanting Catherine's name, gave a subtle nod of satisfaction. He knew he had made the most decisive and correct choice of his life. Camilla's departure had carried away with it the schemes and the long festering fractures, leaving behind a monarchy cleansed of opportunists. Catherine stepped forward, the Williamson Pink Diamond brooch on her chest shimmering brilliantly under the London sun. It was no longer a stolen relic, but a symbol of rebirth. An era of integrity and compassion had officially begun forever, closing the dark chapter of envy embodied by the woman who was now slowly fading into oblivion in that distant, isolated room. How do you feel about Camilla's downfall and the rise of integrity in this high-stakes battle of wits? In your view, what lesson does King Charles III's decisive action offer about the boundary between family ties and justice within a turbulent royal family? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.